The cemetery was quiet at first. White tents flap in the wind. Mourners on black kaftan and black ankara filled the tent. A golden casket rests above a dark, open grave lined with fresh cement. On the casket lies Judith Anderson, Billionaire CEO, Queen of Three Towers on Victoria Island, her eyes closed, cotton wool tucked in her nostrils, and her skin pale. Her husband, Williams, stands beside the casket with a folded handkerchief. Tears shine in his eyes. A pastor clears his throat. Two grave workers step forward to lower the casket. Then a voice tears the air like thunder. "Stop, don't bury her." Everyone turned and shocked at the statement. Some of the mourners lifted their phones to record the unfolding drama. At the back, a man in a tattered brown coat pushes through the crowd. His beard is overgrown and tangled. His hair is wild. A dirty old bag hangs on his shoulder, heavy with the life he still carries. People pull away from him as if he is a storm. The man points straight at Judith. His hand shakes, but his voice does not. "She's not dead." I said, "Don't bury her." "Who is this?" Someone whispers. "Homeless man," another mutters. "Security." Two guards move to block him, but he steps sideways and keeps coming. The wind lifts his coat like wings. He stops at the edge of the mat, where the casket rests, and faces the crowd. "My name is Benjamin," he says, breathless. "Listen to me. This woman is alive." William stiffens. His mouth hardens. "Get this madman out," he snaps. "Sir, you will respect the dead. Judith is my wife. She is gone. We will bury her in peace," the mourners murmured. The pastor lowers his Bible. The grave workers pause. Benjamin points again. Firm, steady. "She is not gone," he says. "She was given a substance. It slows the breathing. It makes the body cold. It fools the eye. She looks dead, but she is not. Give her the neutralizer." Now, a wave of shock washes over the mourners. Someone whispers, "Neutralizer." Another says, "What is he talking about?" Cameras tilt closer. A reporter leans in. Williams's face tightens with anger. "Enough," he says, turning to the guards. "Remove him." But Benjamin does not move. He lifts his chin. "Williams," he says softly, like he knows him. "You know what you did, and Dr. David knows too." The name drops like a stone in water. Eyes flick to the left. The family doctor, David, stands with his stethoscope tucked in his pocket, his lips pressed thin. He looks at Benjamin the way a person looks at a locked door. "Pastor," Williams says, voice sharp. "Continue the service." The pastor hesitates. His fingers tremble on the page. Benjamin takes one slow step closer to the casket. His eyes soften when he looks at Judith. "Madam," he whispers, almost to himself. "Hold on." Then he raises his voice. "Check her mouth. Touch her wrist. Warm her chest. She is there. I heard the plan with my own ears." William spoke of quick burial. Dr. David signed the paper. "Please give her the neutralizer." The hush deepens. Even the tents stop flapping, as if listening. A woman in purple lace steps out from the first row. Her hands shake. "If there is a chance," she says, "we should check." "That is not necessary," William snaps. Sweat shines on his forehead. "We did everything," the doctor confirmed. "Let them check," someone says from the crowd. "What will it cost?" Another voice joins. "Just check." Now the murmur grows into a wave. Heads nod. Eyes narrow at Williams. The guards look unsure. Dr. David clears his throat. "This is ridiculous," he says, forcing a smile. "Grief is making strangers speak nonsense." I examined. Benjamin turns to him, gentle but firm. "Doctor, she gave you a hospital. She bought you a car. She trusted you." Something flickers in Dr. David's eyes. He looks at Williams. Williams gives the smallest shake of his head, and that is when Benjamin drops his bag on the grass, kneels by the casket, and does a simple thing. He takes off his coat and folds it into a pillow. "Please," he says to the pastor, to anyone brave enough, "help me sit her up a little, just a little. She needs air." Then open her mouth only a drop. Silence. The kind of silence that hurts. An older woman steps forward. Her gel is tight and neat. Her eyes are wet. "I am her aunt," she says. "If there is one small thing we can do, we will do it." The spell breaks. Two women move. A young man in a black suit places his hand under Judith's shoulders. The grave workers step back to give space. Together, carefully, they lift Judith just enough for Benjamin to slide the folded coat beneath her neck. Up close, Judith's face looks like sleep. Her lashes are long shadows. The cotton wool in her nostrils is white against her skin. "Please remove the wool," Benjamin says softly. Slowly, the aunt nods and, with gentle fingers, pulls the cotton free. The air seems to move again. Benjamin takes a small brown vial from his bag. It looks old, like it has seen many roads. He holds it up for everyone to see. "Neutralizer," he says. Her body was slowed by something bitter. "This will walk her back." Williams lunges, but two mourners step between him and Benjamin. "Let him try," one says. "If it fails, we bury. If it works, then what?" Williams spits. "Then what? Then we thank God," the aunt says, eyes sharp as a blade. Dr. David's jaw clenches. "Do not put strange liquid." "Doctor," the aunt says, "if you are sure she is gone, this will do nothing. Let him try." All eyes settle on the vial. The sun slips out from behind a cloud and rests like a hand on the scene, on the casket, on the open grave, on the man in the tattered coat who looks like hope. Benjamin kneels. His hands are steady now, made strong by purpose. He twists the cap and dips the glass dropper into the vial. He turns to the aunt. "Please help me open her mouth." The aunt slides a finger gently at the corner of Judith's lips. The young man in black lifts Judith a little more. Benjamin leans close. The crowd leans with him. Williams trembles. "If you do this," he begins. But his voice cracks. Benjamin holds the dropper above Judith's mouth. "One drop," he whispers. "Come back, madam." He squeezes. A single clear drop falls. It lands on Judith's tongue. Everywhere was quiet, waiting for happens next. Benjamin counts under his breath. 1, 2, 3, nothing. 4, 5. A wind shivers through the tents. 6. Benjamin's hand shakes. He raises the dropper for one more drop. "Don't you dare," Williams shouts, stepping forward. The aunt lifts her palm. "Stay back." Benjamin squeezes. The second drop falls, and in that tiny space between drop and tongue, before it touches, a sound crawls up from Judith's chest, so faint it could be wind or memory. Was that a cough? The drop touches. Judith's throat moves, her lips part, and then the air around the cemetery broke into chaos. Screams, shouts, prayers, and gasps filled the place all at once. Phones tilted wildly, recording what no one could believe. Judith's hand had twitched, and now her lips parted with a faint cough. The sound was so soft, yet it cut through the noise like lightning. Benjamin's eyes burned with hope. He leaned closer. "She's coming back," he said, voice trembling but sure. "I told you she's alive." The aunt clutched Judith's wrist, and her face lit up. "She's warm. Lord have mercy, she's warm," she cried. Another woman screamed and fell to her knees in prayer, chanting, "God is great, God is great." But Williams was not moved. His face twisted into fury. As Judith's body stirred, his hand darted inside his jacket pocket. He pulled out something small, metallic, its glint caught in the sunlight. Benjamin froze. Was it a knife? A syringe? Or worse? "Stay back!" Williams roared, his eyes wild, spittle on his lips. "She belongs in the ground. Do you hear me? In the ground." Two men in black suits lunged toward him, but he shoved them away with desperate strength. The crowd surged backward, panicked. Mothers pulled children close. The pastor dropped his Bible, his voice cracking in fear. Benjamin did not move. He stood his ground, his ragged coat brushing the grass, his beard shaking with the wind. His voice thundered again, stronger than before. "Look at her, Williams. Look at your wife. She breathes." Everyone turned, and there it was, Judith's chest, rising and falling, weak but undeniable. Another cough burst from her throat, louder this time. Her eyes fluttered like heavy doors trying to open. The crowd gasped as one. The aunt shouted, "She's alive! She's alive!" Judith's lips trembled, and a hoarse whisper escaped. "Why?" Her eyes half opened, glassy and confused. She stared at the man looming over her. Her voice grew louder, filled with pain. "Williams, why?" The scene shifted in an instant. The strength drained from Williams' body. His hand dropped, the metallic object slipping from his fingers. It clattered onto the concrete beside the grave, a small syringe filled with cloudy liquid. Gasps rippled again through the mourners. The guards pounced, pinning him to the ground as he kicked and screamed. "No," Williams roared. "She was supposed to be gone. She was supposed to be—" His words were cut off as the guards twisted his arms behind him. Sweat drenched his face, and the mask of grief he had worn melted into naked rage. All eyes swung to Dr. David. The doctor had stepped backward, his face drained of color. He tugged nervously at his collar, sweat sliding down his temple. I pronounced what I saw," he stammered. "I thought she was gone." Benjamin's voice cut sharp through the air. "Liar. You helped him. You signed her death, knowing she still lived." "It was not to reachability," Judith coughed again, this time stronger. She struggled upright with the aunt's help, her hair tumbling loose, her skin damp with sweat. Her eyes, red and fierce, locked on Williams. Tears spilled, but her voice shook with power. "What did I ever do to you?" she said, her words cracking the silence. "To deserve this?" Williams froze in the arms of the guards. Judith's voice rose, trembling with anger and sorrow. "I gave you power. I trusted you with a branch of my empire. I loved you despite my wealth. And this is how you repay me." The crowd erupted in murmurs. Some wept. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Judith's gaze shifted to Dr. David, who stood rooted like a guilty tree. "And you," she spat, her voice trembling. "I built your hospital. I gave you a car. I lifted you when you had nothing. How could you betray me with him?" Dr. David stammered, his lips fumbling for words. But the truth was already clear, written in his sweat, in his silence. Judith's strength faltered, and she swayed. Benjamin was at her side in an instant, steadying her with gentle, calloused hands. His voice was soft now, stripped of thunder. "Easy, madam. You are safe." She turned to him, her eyes meeting his. They were filled with tears, but beneath them was a glimmer of gratitude, fierce and raw. For the first time, she saw past the ragged beard and tattered coat. She saw the man who had saved her life. "Who are you?" she whispered, her breath shaky. "Why did you do this?" Benjamin lowered his eyes, his voice rough like gravel. "Because I knew the truth," he said. "I heard him yesterday, in his car. He spoke of quick burial, of silence, of how the empire would be his. I couldn't let it happen. Not again." The mourners drew closer, hanging on every word. Judith clung to his arm, her body trembling, her breath shallow but steady. Her voice cracked as she spoke. You saved me. You gave me back my life." William screamed again, thrashing against the guards. "She should be mine. Everything should be mine." But his cries fell flat, drowned out by the prayers rising from the crowd, by the sobs of those who had loved Judith, by the furious glares turned his way. Sirens wailed in the distance. The police were coming. Benjamin, still kneeling at Judith's side, lifted his head toward the approaching sound. His eyes burned not with pride, but with something deeper. Sorrow. The memory of his own broken life weighed on him like chains, Judith noticed. She touched his hand weakly. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Don't leave my side." And as the police vehicles rolled into the cemetery gates, their red lights flashing against the marble tombstones, everyone turned to watch the end of one chapter and the trembling beginning of another. Because Judith Anderson, thought dead, now breathed again, and the man who had dragged her back from the grave, the homeless stranger they had all ignored, was about to change everything. The officers stepped forward. The guards shoved Williams into their arms. Dr. David's knees buckled, and he fell to the ground, sobbing. The police read the charges aloud: attempted murder, conspiracy, betrayal, but Benjamin said nothing. He only held Judith steady as she sat upon her own casket, the woman who refused to die. And in that moment, with flashing lights bouncing across his weathered face, the world saw Benjamin not as a beggar, not as a madman, but as the voice that had stopped death itself. Judith whispered again, this time louder, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Thank you for saving me." And the crowd, still in shock, leaned forward, wondering what would happen next. The court was overflowing. Every seat was taken, every corner crammed with people pressing forward to witness the case that had gripped the nation. Outside, television vans lined the street, cameras flashing as anchors whispered into microphones. The news was everywhere. Billionaire Judith Anderson rose from the dead. Husband and family doctor arrested in shocking conspiracy. Judith herself entered slowly, supported by Benjamin on one side and her aunt on the other. Her steps were unsteady, but her head was lifted high. She wore a plain black gown, nothing of her usual glittering elegance, but her presence filled the room. Gasps rippled through the crowd as she sat down at the front, her eyes fixed on the accused. Williams sat in the dock, his face pale, his eyes cold. Gone was the mask of grief he had worn at the funeral. Now his lips curled in disdain as he glanced at Judith. Beside him sat Dr. David, his head bowed, his hands trembling. Sweat darkened his shirt under the courtroom's bright lights. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair and sharp glasses, banged her gavel. This court is now in session. The case of the State versus Williams Anderson and Dr. David Ofori. Charges: attempted murder, conspiracy to murder, and medical malpractice. Woman. The prosecutor rose, his voice firm and cutting. My lord, what we have before us is not a simple matter of greed. It is the cold-blooded plot of a husband who sought to bury his wife alive, aided by a doctor who betrayed his oath. Their aim was to seize control of her empire, billions in assets, companies that feed families across this nation. But for the courage of one man, this wickedness would have been sealed under the soil, the crowd murmured. Many glanced at Benjamin, who sat quietly at Judith's side. His coat washed now, his beard combed, though his face still bore the scars of hardship. He looked down, uncomfortable under the sudden attention. The prosecutor turned toward Williams. Do you deny plotting to poison your wife with a slow-acting compound designed to mimic death? Do you deny instructing this doctor to pronounce her dead prematurely and rush her burial? Williams leaned forward, his voice cold. I deny everything. This is nothing but lies spun by a mad vagrant and a woman too weak to understand her own body's failure. My wife was dying already. I merely accepted it. Gasps. Judith's jaw clenched. She rose suddenly, her voice shaking with rage. You liar, she cried. Look at me, Williams. You put poison in my food. You forced my doctor, my friend, to swear I was gone. You tried to bury me alive, like trash. The judge banged the gavel sharply. Order in the court. But the electricity in the air was uncontainable. The prosecutor lifted a small vial, sealed in evidence bagging. My lord, this was retrieved from the syringe found beside the grave. Analysis proves it is a paralytic toxin capable of slowing the heartbeat, making the victim appear dead. Only a trained doctor could confirm life. And yet, this doctor signed a death certificate. All eyes turned to Dr. David. His face collapsed. He sobbed openly, his words tumbling. I was forced. He threatened me. Williams said if I didn't help, he would ruin me. He said I would lose my hospital, my family. I swear. I only signed because I was afraid. Judith's face darkened. Afraid? You let him put me in a coffin. You let them lower me into the earth. You betrayed your oath and me. Dr. David buried his face in his hands. Forgive me, Judith. Forgive me. The prosecutor turned to the judge. My lord, we have the poison, we have the syringe, we have the testimony of the victim herself, and we have the witness, the man who risked his life to speak the truth. Benjamin froze as the prosecutor's hand gestured toward him. The entire court turned to face him. Whispers rose. That's the homeless man, the beggar who stopped the funeral. The judge nodded. Mr. Benjamin Okoro, please step forward. Benjamin rose slowly, each step echoing in the silent hall. He stopped at the witness stand, his rough hands gripping the wooden rail. The oath was read. He swore, his voice low but steady. The prosecutor leaned close. Mr. Okoro, tell this court what you witnessed. Benjamin lifted his head, his eyes scanning the hall. He swallowed hard. Then his voice rang out, calm but heavy with truth. The day before the burial, I was under the bridge, where I sleep. I heard a car parked nearby. Two men were inside, Williams and Dr. David. They were arguing. I heard Williams say, "The poison worked. She is cold already. Tomorrow, we bury her before anyone suspects." The doctor said he was scared, but Williams told him, "Do as I say, or you'll lose everything." The crowd erupted again. The judge shouted for silence. Benjamin's voice grew stronger. I knew then that if I didn't speak, they would bury her alive. I waited at the cemetery. When they brought her coffin, I begged them to stop. They called me mad. But I saw her fingers twitch. I could not let them lower her in. He paused, his eyes moist. I lost my wife and daughter years ago. I was powerless then, but not this time. Not again. The silence in the room was thick, broken only by the quiet sobbing of a few women in the gallery. Judith's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "God bless you, Benjamin." The defense attorney rose, his tone mocking. "So we are to believe the word of a beggar? A man who sleeps under bridges? How do we know he did not imagine these words? How do we know he wasn't paid by my client's enemies to cause chaos?" Benjamin's jaw tightened. He stood taller. "I may be poor, I may sleep on the streets, but I do not lie. I have nothing to gain, only the truth to tell." The judge leaned forward, her face stern. "The witness has spoken with courage. Let the court weigh his words alongside the evidence." Williams slammed his fists on the table. "He's lying. They're all lying." But his voice cracked, desperate, hollow. The gavel struck again. "Order!" As the trial moved on, one truth was clear. The mask of Williams had fallen. The empire he dreamed of was slipping from his grasp. And Benjamin, the man he would never have noticed in his richest days, now stood as the key to his downfall. And as Judith sat, her hand clutching Benjamin's, a new thought sparked in the hearts of all watching. Perhaps this was not just her resurrection, but his, too. The trial of truth had begun, and nothing would remain the same. The trial stretched into days. Each morning the courtroom overflowed with reporters, business magnates, and ordinary people who had come just to see Judith Anderson alive and speaking. Every evening the headlines blazed across Nigeria, from grave to courtroom, Judith's shocking return. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Williams sat stiff, his once perfect suits wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. Gone was the smooth-talking businessman the public once admired. He looked like a caged animal, pacing, snarling whenever a witness spoke against him. Dr. David, in contrast, grew weaker with every session. He avoided Judith's eyes, his shoulders bent, as though carrying the weight of his betrayal. Sometimes he muttered prayers under his breath, his fingers trembling whenever evidence was shown. On the fourth day, the prosecutor called forward a new witness, Judith's personal driver, Chaik. A large man with honest eyes, he stepped to the stand, his voice steady. "My lord," he began. "On the night Madam collapsed, I drove her to the hospital. She was struggling to breathe. But when we reached the gate, Dr. David told me to leave, that he would handle it privately. I begged to stay. He refused. 2 hours later, he told us she was dead." The court gasped. Judith covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. Chike bowed his head. "I knew something was wrong. Madam was weak, but not gone. I should have fought harder." The prosecutor nodded. "So you confirm, Mr. Chike, that Dr. David insisted on isolation and gave no room for second opinion?" "Yes, sir." The defense squirmed. Their case was collapsing like a wall of sand under rain. Next came the toxicologist, presenting charts and slides. The substance found in the syringe is called tetrodotoxin. In low doses, it mimics death, slows heartbeat, freezes muscles, masks breath. Without advanced equipment, one could easily mistake the victim for a corpse. It was intentional. This was no accident. The room fell silent. The weight of the evidence pressed on everyone. Finally, the judge turned to Williams. "Mr. Anderson, you have heard the charges, the testimony, the scientific proof. Do you have anything to say before this court passes judgment?" Williams rose slowly, his face twisted, half fury, half despair. His voice cracked as he spoke. "Yes, I have something to say. I loved Judith once, but she loved her companies more than me. Everything was always about her empire, her billions, her power. What was I? A shadow in her house. A husband in name only. I was supposed to share in her glory, yet she treated me like a servant." Judith flinched as though struck. The audience murmured, stunned. Williams's voice grew louder, his fists shaking. "So yes, I wanted it all. I wanted what was mine. If she had to die for me to live as a man, so be it." Chaos erupted. Shouts, gasps, cries of outrage filled the court. The judge banged her gavel furiously. "Order! Order!" Judith's tears spilled freely now. She stood, trembling but strong, her voice rising above the noise. You fool. Love is not stolen. Respect is not forced. You had everything, my trust, my home, my life. But your greed drowned you. You tried to kill me, and now you have killed yourself. Williams's eyes burned with madness. I regret nothing, he roared, his voice echoing. Guards surged forward as he tried to leap across the dock. They held him down, shackles clinking as he screamed curses. Dr. David broke into sobs, collapsing onto the floor of the dock. Forgive me, my lord. Forgive me, Judith. I betrayed everything I swore to be. I deserve death. The judge's gavel thundered once more. The hall fell into tense silence. Her voice was firm, unshaken. This court has heard enough. Williams Anderson, you are guilty of attempted murder, conspiracy to murder, and greed of the highest order. You are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment with hard labor. May your chains remind you of the life you tried to bury. Williams screamed as the guards dragged him away, his voice echoing, "It should have been mine, all mine." The judge turned to Dr. David. And you, Dr. David Ofori, trusted with life but dealing in death, your betrayal of your oath is unforgivable. This court sentences you to life imprisonment as well. You will never again hold the life of another in your hands. Dr. David collapsed into his chair, too broken to resist as police carried him out. The gavel struck a final time. Court dismissed. The hall erupted, some clapping, others weeping, all buzzing with the weight of history. Reporters rushed out to spread the verdict. Judith, exhausted, sank into her seat. Her body trembled with relief and pain. She whispered, "It's over." But beside her, Benjamin shook his head gently. "No, madam, it is only the beginning. You have your life again. Now, what will you do with it?" She turned to him, her eyes soft, her lips trembling with gratitude. "I wouldn't be here without you. You have no home, no rest, yet you gave me both. Benjamin, you saved me." Benjamin looked away, his voice quiet. "I only did what I could not do before. My wife, my daughter, I failed them. But this time, I could not fail." Judith touched his hand, firm and warm. "You did not fail. You were my miracle." Around them, people gathered, trying to shake Benjamin's hand, clapping him on the back, praising him. He had been invisible for years, a shadow on the streets. Now he stood in the light, the man who stopped a burial, the man who saved a billionaire. Judith rose, still holding his hand. "You will not return to the bridge tonight," she said firmly. "From this day, you walk with me. If I lived again, then so will you." Benjamin's throat tightened. Tears welled in his eyes, but he nodded, silent. For the first time in years, he felt seen, and as they left the courtroom together, Judith, her aunt, and Benjamin at her side, the crowd outside roared like a storm, cameras flashing, voices chanting his name. Benjamin, Benjamin, the man who stopped death. And though the chains had closed on Williams and David, new doors were opening, doors that neither Judith nor Benjamin had ever imagined before. The battle for justice was won, but the journey of redemption had only just begun. The heavy doors of Judith Anderson's mansion opened to a new season of life. The house that once smelled of morning now breathed fresh air, its corridors filled with sunlight and hope. But behind the glow, the scars of betrayal lingered. After the trial ended and Williams and Dr. David were sentenced, Judith invited Benjamin to stay at her estate. One evening, after dinner, she led him into her private study. The room was lined with mahogany shelves, books stacked in neat rows, and a single lamp casting a warm glow. Judith poured 2 glasses of water and gestured for Benjamin to sit. His hands shook slightly as he held the cup. For a long time, he stared into it, as though searching for courage. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and raw. "Madam Judith, there's something I've carried alone for years. Tonight, I must say it." Judith leaned forward, her eyes soft with concern. He swallowed hard. "I wasn't always like this. I was once a man with dignity, a software engineer, a husband, and a father. But one day, everything collapsed. I lost my job. My wife packed her things, and she vanished with my daughter. She left only a note." His voice broke. "A note telling me the child I raised, the girl I called mine, wasn't my blood." Judith's eyes widened, tears springing to them. Benjamin pressed his palms together tightly. "The betrayal destroyed me. I wandered the streets, unable to breathe, unable to live. I slept under bridges because hope abandoned me." His shoulders trembled. "But yesterday, Under that bridge, I overheard Williams. He was making phone calls from his car, planning to take over your companies after you were buried. His words froze my blood. That's why I ran to the cemetery. That's why I stopped them. For a long moment, silence filled the study. Only the faint ticking of the clock could be heard. Judith's hands shook as she reached across the table and clasped his. "Benjamin," she whispered, tears streaking down her cheeks. "You carried all that pain, and still you risked your life for me. Do you know what that means?" Benjamin's voice cracked. "It means, maybe I still have a reason to exist." In the days following his confession, Judith refused to let Benjamin slip back into the shadows of her mansion. She saw something in him, not just a man who had saved her life, but a mind sharpened by hardship and loss. At first, Benjamin resisted. "Madam, I am no longer the man I used to be. Let me serve you quietly in the background," he said one morning as he helped carry files from her study. But Judith shook her head. "You will not hide anymore. You have given me back my life. Let me give you back yours." So Benjamin began helping with small duties in Anderson Holdings, carrying files, checking schedules, organizing reports. He moved with humility, keeping his head down. Yet little by little, his hidden brilliance surfaced. One afternoon, during a tense board meeting, the company's directors struggled with a corrupted presentation file. Panic spread across the room as investors waited impatiently. While others fumbled, Benjamin quietly stepped forward. In minutes, he reprogrammed the system and restored the slides. Gasps filled the room. "Where did you learn that?" a director asked in disbelief. Benjamin hesitated. "I was once a software engineer, before everything fell apart." Judith's eyes softened with pride. She rose and announced firmly, "From today, Benjamin is no longer a helper in the background. He is my special advisor, and his counsel will guide this company." The board members exchanged looks, some skeptical, others intrigued. But no one could deny the calm authority in Judith's voice. For the first time in years, Benjamin stood tall. No longer a nameless wanderer, he was a man reborn, and with his input, Anderson Holdings was never the same again. Judith and Benjamin grew closer. They spent evenings in the study, talking about life, faith, and second chances. She admired his honesty, his unpolished wisdom, his sincerity that cut deeper than diamonds. For the first time since her betrayal, she found her heart stirring. Quietly, Judith wished he might love her, not as the billionaire the world saw, but as a woman whose soul had been bruised. Yet Benjamin never seemed to notice the silent longing in her eyes. One afternoon, as they strolled in the garden, Benjamin spoke with unusual excitement. "Judith, I want you to meet someone. Her name is Juliana. She is kind, gentle. She makes me smile again." Judith's heart clenched. She forced a smile, even as her chest ached. She had hoped foolishly that Benjamin might see her as more than a friend. But reality stood firm. He loved another. That night, Judith cried alone in her room. Yet by dawn, she resolved her pain into strength. "If he cannot be mine, then I will support his happiness." When Benjamin proposed to Juliana months later, Judith insisted on sponsoring the wedding. "It is my honor," she told him, her smile hiding the bittersweet truth in her heart. The wedding day was beautiful. The garden was decorated with white roses and golden drapes. Benjamin stood tall in a navy blue suit, his eyes glowing as Juliana, dressed in an elegant white gown, walked toward him. Judith watched from the front row, her eyes glistening. Though her heart once longed for him, she felt peace seeing him happy. When they exchanged vows, she clapped with genuine joy, whispering to herself, "This is what he deserves: love, laughter, a new beginning." Months after Benjamin's marriage, fate surprised Judith too. At a charity gala, she met George, a businessman known not for wealth alone, but for his humility and compassion. He admired Judith not as a billionaire, but as a survivor. Their friendship grew into something deeper. George brought back laughter into Judith's life, and for the first time since her near death, she felt whole. When George proposed months later, Judith said yes. At her wedding, Benjamin and Juliana sat proudly in the front row, clapping as she walked down the aisle. This time, there were no tears of regret, only gratitude. 1 year later, life blossomed again. Benjamin and Juliana welcomed a baby boy whom they named Jonathan. Around the same time, Judith and George celebrated the birth of their baby girl, Eliana. One golden evening, they gathered in the mansion's garden, the babies cradled in their arms. Benjamin rocked Jonathan gently while Judith held Eliana close to her chest. Tears filled their eyes as they looked at each other. They remembered how close death had come, how betrayal nearly buried them both. Yet here they were alive, surrounded by laughter, holding the promise of a future in tiny, innocent hands. Benjamin raised his glass. "From ashes to dawn," he said softly. Judith smiled, whispering back, "Yes, from ashes to dawn." But one name was never forgotten: Williams. In prison, Williams was a broken man. The arrogance that once fueled him had crumbled under the weight of iron bars. Life behind walls gnawed at him, and every night he replayed the moment he watched Judith rise from the coffin. He began writing letters from prison, begging for forgiveness. At first, Judith ignored them, but the letters never stopped. They grew humbler, soaked with regret. "Judith, I was blind. Greed consumed me. If I could turn back time, I would kneel at your feet and beg 1,000 times. Please forgive me. Let my story be a warning to others." 10 years later, on the 10th anniversary of Judith's survival, she shocked the nation. At a grand event where her family, Benjamin, Juliana, and their children stood beside her, she announced, "10 years ago, I nearly went to the grave because of betrayal. But today, I choose not to let hatred bury me again. I forgive Williams Anderson." The hall gasped. Some clapped, others murmured in disbelief. But Judith's eyes were firm. Forgiveness is not weakness, it is freedom. "If my survival is to mean anything, it must teach us that love, not vengeance," writes the final chapter. Undersewed, weeks later, Williams was released after 10 long years. He walked out of prison, a frail man, his once proud face lined with regret. He had nothing left, no wealth, no family, no power. In a tiny rented room on the outskirts of town, he lived quietly. Whenever Judith appeared on television, smiling with George, laughing with Eliana, he would sit alone, tears running down his face. He whispered to the empty walls, "Greed destroyed me. Let my mistake teach others what I failed to see." Back at the mansion, Judith and Benjamin often sat in the garden together with their spouses, watching their children play. They spoke not of betrayal anymore, but of hope. Judith would smile at Benjamin and say, "We lived through death, and now we live for life." And as the sun set behind them, painting the sky with golden fire, their story stood as a testimony that even from the grave, hope can rise. That from betrayal, love can bloom. That from ashes, dawn will always come. What is your view about this story? If you were in Judith's shoes, would you have forgiven Williams? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.